Welcome to HP Prime Guide Arithmetic Fundamentals Percentage. We'll start by querying our calculator. Kind of interesting is that our last unit, when we were dealing with numbers, we had units associated with the numbers. Here we have the initial definitions for base, rate, and percentage, and the formula base times rate is equal to percentage. Since we are using our calculator, it's nice to know these relationships between percent, decimals, and fractions and reduced fractions. When we're talking about 10% of a number, 0.10 or 10 over 100 or 1 over 10, 50% of a number, 0.50, 50 over 100 or 1 half, 100% of a number, 1 or 100 over 100, or 200% of a number, 2 or 200 over 100 or twice of the number. We can replace the word percent with its sign. In these problems, we have a proportion where the ratios compare percent to amount. So the percents drop out because we have 1% over 100%, 25% over 100%, X% over 100%. So the percents always drop out. Over here we have the percentage over the base, X over 200, percentage over the base, 2 over X, percentage over the base, 8 over 20. We have down here that the product of the means equals the product of the extremes. So 200 equals 100x, 25x equals 200, 20x is equal to 800. We can get these answers by using ratios. 200 divided by 100, which is 2, 200 divided by 25, which is 8, and 800 divided by 20, which turns out to be 40. These problems are known as type 1, type 2, and type 3 because when we have base times rate is equal to percentage, any one of these three things can be missing. The other way to work these problems is to use the CAS view of our calculator and the solve operation. What we do is translate the program as it's written using for the percent the decimal equivalent. The last one here, where we're looking for the percent, we have to use the X over 100. Let's go ahead and do this on our calculator. Press the CAS key, press Toolbox, use the CAS soft key, solve, and select solve. Now we want to enter the equation in. 0.01 times 200. We need to get an equal sign. The X, we can use the XT theta N key. Press enter. The answer turns out to be 2. For the second problem, use the toolbox. Solve. Type in the equation 2 equals 0.25 times X. Press enter. The answer turns out to be 8. We finished discussion of this page with the last equation. Toolbox, solve, 8 equals X, divide 100, move out of the fraction, times 20, press enter. The result is 40. Before we begin on percent applications using proportions, let me clear out our calculator. Let me diverge for a minute and tell you how I came up with this chart. My first year teaching, 1975 in college, I was teaching in a lab besides teaching in traditional classes. The lab was composed of students taking slide rule, Fortran, arithmetic, geometry, and algebra. They could be in any of these courses. Last semester, they could have left off at any place. I had to know everything that was going on in all these different courses. I wasn't sweating so much the arithmetic course as I was like the Fortran and the slide rule. But my first question was, a student came in to me and he said he worked at a grocery store and they were marking up their meats by 30%, charged $1. He would thought that it should be $1.30. It turned out to be $1.43. And he asked me, well, why is 30% $1.43? I was stuck on this problem and I came up with this chart to help me solve this problem. At the time, it always seemed to work. I didn't know why it worked, but the chart always seemed to work. So what I did was take A unit is to A percent, B unit is to B percent, and C unit is to C percent. So I came up with three ratios. Any two of these taken together, I could solve that proportion and always got the correct answer. When I was doing increase, I added. When I was doing decrease and discount, I subtracted. As I mentioned earlier, I am using the Silver Burdette arithmetic series from the early 20th century for this tutorial. When I was doing the ratio and proportions, they came up with that A unit is to C unit as A percent is to C percent for a direct ratio. My unit here with A unit is to A percent as C unit is C percent is mathematically equivalent with the means and the extremes to this. So this is why I was able to use this particular chart. Going back to my student's problem, there are two ways to figure markup. One is basing it on cost, one is basing it on selling price. So if we base it on selling price, then this is 100%. Then this, it turns out to be 30% markup, so this is 70%. So since the unit was $1, $1 is to 70% as X is to 100%. Using our calculator for the means equals the extreme, 1 times 100. Go outside our parentheses, divide 70, press enter. Press the ABC button and we get the answer to be $1.43. We forgot to change ourselves out of the CAS mode, so this is why we came up with this method here. Let's go over to the home method and do it again. So put in parentheses 1 times 100. Go outside of our parentheses, divide 70, press enter, and that's why we came up with $1.43. So it's nicer to do all of our calculations in the home mode rather than the CAS mode. Coffee was sold at 40 cents a pound, which was at a profit of 25%. Find the cost if profit is based on costs. Again, we did the problem before right here in the calculator where the markup was based on selling price. Here we're doing it where the markup is based on cost. This is usually for distributors. This one is usually for retailers. So we have our relation and then we come up with our line for amounts and our line for rates. What our relation is cost plus profit equals selling price. X plus the profit equals 40 cents. 100% plus 25%, since it was based on cost, the 100% was here. The selling price is 125%. There are two ways to work this problem. We can figure out what the profit is and add it, or we can work the problem direct. So, or I mean subtract it. So x is to 100 as 40 is to 125. Using our means and extremes, we have 40 times 100 divided by 125. So the answer to this problem is 32. For these problems, the details are only shown for the first and last problem. So when we work this problem out here, I would recommend that you write this stuff down on a sheet of paper. So find the selling price and the loss. If the cost is $10.50 and the rate of loss is 33 1/3%. What you do on your piece of paper is you come up with that cost minus loss equals selling price. You put in for the rates going across 100% minus 33 1/3% turns out to be 66 2/3%. For the cost going across, you put in $10.50. For the selling price, you put in X. Then what you end up doing is you set up your ratios, and we have it written here in the abbreviated form for our ratios. Much handier if you actually write out these ratios in this form rather than write out the ratios in this form. We wrote it out in this form to be compact, but you're much better calculating if you write it out the other way. So then we're going to take the 10.5 times 66 2/3. There was parentheses put in before we did this, and parentheses put in on the mixed numeral. The parentheses for the numerator are dropped when the calculator writes this part out in the history, and divided it by a 100 to get the price that we sold it for to be $7. To get our loss, we take the 10.50 minus 7, and our loss is $3.50. We have scrolled down, and we now will look at the last problem. For these ones that we skipped, you will need to write these out and pay more attention to the details to come up with the answers. The answers are shown over here in the calculator screens. Another application for percent is interest. Interest is equal to principal times rate times time, and principal plus interest is equal to the total amount. So we'll take this particular problem, we'll take the 200 days over 360, because that's what they consider a year to be, and that's 5/9. So the total year will be 2 5/9. Then the interest rate was at 4%, we'll use 0.04. We don't know two of our values, so we'll use the letters X and Y. Then the second equation, we'll have that y plus x is equal to $595.20. When we use the solve command with two variables, we need to put this into a list. So we put the first equation in the list and the second equation in the list. Then after the list, we'll put a comma and we'll add another list with our variables in. Then when we press enter, we come up with this answer. We will do this on our calculator so you can see this in action. To work this problem, we need to be in CAS. Let's clear out our calculator. Press the toolbox. Solve. Solve. Then what we need is the list operator. Then we need the first equation. So we have the x equals, to get y, it's right here, so we're going to hit alpha y times 0.04 times mixed numerals, so we're only going to need parentheses, 2 plus, for the fraction part, we'll use divide, 5 divided by 9. Then we need to get outside of our parentheses, comma, need a y, plus X is easiest through this key equals 595.20. We'll go ahead and put the 0 in. It's going to get dropped. We need to get outside of our list. Need a separator, comma. Need the list again. Need the variables. Use this key for our X, comma. Then we need our Y. And press enter. So we end up with our answer being 55.2 and 540. Our answers are $55.20 and $540. This ends our video on percentage.